I drove my Tesla Model 3 across the Mexican border. Good idea or bad? I'm Frugal Tesla Guy, and I'm going to share my experience driving a Tesla in Baja, California. It was my son's spring break, and it was just time overall to visit my mom in Baja, California, in a small community called La Misión between Rosarito and Ensenada. Now, typically we fly from Sacramento into San Diego and drive across the border from there, but it has been a while since we actually made the trek from Redding to Mexico via car. Plus, it was an opportunity to drive my Tesla Model 3 across the Mexican border. Now, let's start with the drive down there. Now, according to Google Maps, it's a 719-mile drive, and without any stops, should take us a little under 11 hours to get there. However, we all know that's not how it works, and after careful planning, made 4 charging stops along the way. Now, we left home at about 9:45 in the morning with about 95% charge in the battery, and our first stop was Woodland, California. According to the trip planner, we would still have 38% once we arrived, and once we plugged into the supercharger, you can see it was only off by 1%. It was also a little before noon, and it was time for lunch. With plenty of restaurants near the charger, we were able to fuel ourselves up as well. Now, it actually took longer for us to order and get something to eat, and then of course sit down and eat it, because 40 minutes later, we had a 97% charge in the battery once we finished eating. Now, we were back on the road and on our way to the newly opened Baja supercharger with an anticipated 26% upon arriving. Now, this time it was actually off by 4%, and we still had 30% once we arrived. Once again, very impressive. Now, I was excited to see this supercharger because it is the largest in the US with 56 charging stalls, 16 more than Kettleman, not too far away. Oh yeah, and check out the charging rate. Granted, it dropped below that not long after this, but impressive nonetheless. Now, we plugged in at 3:11 in the afternoon, and after everyone took a restroom break and grabbed a few snacks, we were on the road in 30 minutes with 88% in the battery. Our next stop was at the Tejon Ranch supercharger with a projected 21% left in the battery once we arrived, which was shortly after 6 o'clock in the evening. Once again, the car didn't let us down with 22% upon plugging in. Unfortunately, the max output of this supercharger is 150 kilowatts and even lower when shared with another Tesla. This guy pulled in shortly after we plugged in. Now, after a couple of restroom breaks and grabbing a quick bite, we still needed to spend a little time waiting to get the charge we needed. With 87% in the battery, we made our way up and over the Grapevine, drove through Los Angeles, and stopped at the San Clemente supercharger with 39% left in the battery. Now, the car's initial projection was 33, once again proving to be very reliable. Now, since this was our last stop before driving across the border, I wanted to make sure we had at least 50% upon arriving at my mom's place. I later discovered I could have arrived with 30 or even 20% without any problems. This is why this stop took us 50 minutes before getting back on the road. We made it to the border a little after 11 o'clock at night without any problems getting across. And since it was so late, there wasn't much traffic at all, making it even easier and less stressful. However, that was about to change because about 30 minutes past the border, it was very dark, and I noticed a lot of debris in the road and slowed down. To avoid a lot of that debris, I turned a little to the right to avoid this tire, and before I knew it, I was headed straight for a car that rolled over. Now, it doesn't look as bad in this video, but I was going fast enough that it could have still been very dangerous. So I slammed on the brakes and slowly made my way past the car. About a mile down the road was a toll booth, and I was able to communicate to a police officer about the accident. He thanked me and quickly drove off in the car. It was smooth sailing after that, and we made it to our destination safely shortly after midnight. This is how we would spend the next 6 mornings, and the days were filled with relaxation, boogie boarding, zip lining, shopping, eating great Mexican food, more relaxation, more skimboarding, more shopping, and more boogie boarding. But now you might be asking, is Baja California, Mexico, Tesla Model 3 friendly? Well, to answer that question, yes and no. Yes, because there is a supercharger in Ensenada, and yes, if you don't plan on traveling off the main roads. Many of the back roads, including residential areas, are not paved and not well maintained, if at all. Now, since the Model 3 is fairly low to the ground, there are a lot of opportunities to bottom out. It's even worse for me because I don't have an all-wheel drive. Now, this is where having a Model Y or an X would come in handy, especially the X, since it has air suspension allowing you to raise it higher off the ground. Now, as I mentioned, there is a supercharger in Ensenada, but that's the only one in the Baja Peninsula. And although there are destination chargers all the way down to Cabo San Lucas, it would take at least 4 charging stops to make it. Since we weren't driving to Cabo, but rather just driving to Ensenada for the day, we decided to check out the supercharger.
Hola. Hola. Buen día. ¿Habla inglés?
Charge the car.
Charge the car. Okay.
Thank you.
Gracias. Okay, I'm gonna pick this up.
There you go.
Okay.
And then there's a button right there. See that?
Yeah.
Point it at the charging thing.
I don't know if it's charging. Ah, there it is
you
right
go.
there. Look at that. Well, it couldn't be any easier.
There you go. You don't have to swipe a credit card. It all goes on my account.
Just all like that?
All like that.
Oh, wow.
All right, here's everybody. My mom Molly over here. We got my wife Sadie, and there's Aiden over there. Now we're in Ensenada, and we just charged. We didn't really need a charge. We just, for the sake of we're in Baja, California. Of course, we want to charge, right? So that's exactly what we did here. My only complaint, and we're going to see how it is, getting up into this parking structure. There's a really big hump, and we scraped the bottom of the car.
Yeah. That's what I.
Oh.
That's not a good.
I was afraid of that. So I'm gonna have to be a little bit more careful going down, but it's kind of disappointing on Tesla's part to not think about that, because there are a lot of Model 3s that are low to the ground like this. So let's see if that's something we can work on, Tesla, okay? Let's see if we can do something about that, all right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk, I know you watch my channel all the time. Let's see what we can do.
Does he?
No, of course not. Are you kidding me? No.
Not yet.
Not
Well,
yet.
you
Yes,
should.
there we go. Yes.
He should.
Car. So if I try to go down at an angle, that might help.
Oh yeah, piece of cake.
Oh, there we go. So if you're coming in to Ensenada Supercharger, just be aware that going up that hump there, you're going to scrape if you're going straight at it, if you're in a Model 3 at least. Model Y will probably clear it, same as the X and S, especially if you have your suspension up higher. But the Model 3, it will scrape straight on, so just be careful of that. Our second stop in Ensenada was at Tacos Phoenix. Now, we've been coming here for the last 20 years plus and haven't found a fish taco anywhere that even comes close to these. Now that we had full bellies, it was time to help support the local economy. Now on our way back, there were plenty of photo opportunities. Now, like any vacation, all all good things must come to an end. And on the way back, minus the typical slow-moving traffic at the border, it was smooth sailing. We did make a stop at the San Diego Zoo before making the trek back up I-5. Unfortunately, by the time we got on the road, we hit rush hour traffic in LA. No bueno. Once it got dark, it was even smoother sailing. However, the advantage of being able to empty your bladder and get something to eat and drink while you're charging is no longer a valid argument, since everything closes down after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. So you're just forced to sit and wait while it charges and, well, find more creative ways to empty your bladder. We were home at 5 o'clock in the morning and slept most of the day to recuperate. So to give you some of my final thoughts about the overall trip, there are a few things I wanted to address. Obviously, the trip to Mexico itself and what it's like driving in Baja, California. And this is something I've known since I've been going there back and forth for the last 20 plus years, and that is the roads are horrendous for the most part in Mexico. So driving a Tesla Model 3 is not something I would really want to do on a regular basis, just because the car is so low to the ground. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, there's just a lot of opportunities to bottom out. And not to mention, even if you're on a paved road that's in good shape, all of the parking lots to get into any kind of store or a restaurant is a dirt parking lot. And a lot of times it's like a cliff coming off of the road into the parking lot. Once again, another opportunity for you to bottom out. So that's where I think the Cybertruck is going to be a welcomed sight once I do get it, and hopefully we can get it within the next year, and hopefully everybody can get it within the next year. But I am looking forward to driving the Cybertruck in Mexico because it's going to be a beast and it's going to handle those roads. Even going down to Cabo San Lucas, I didn't go all the way down there once, but I did go halfway down the peninsula last year, as a matter of fact. And the highway's not that great. Again, same situation, getting off of the road. It's like a big cliff coming off onto some of those parking lots. So that is just, I would say, not a friendly place for a Tesla Model 3. Now, I did also want to address Autopilot, and I was able to give it a test. So take a look at this. We recorded on our way out back to the States. Just kind of wanted to show you our experience with it. All right, so this is me a week after vacation, no shave, all that good stuff. But I wanted to really kind of give you an example of Autopilot in Mexico to see if it works. Now you can see here that we do have, if we look at the road, you can see the road is very well marked, and it's in good shape. So theoretically it should work just fine. So let's go ahead and go to the screen. I'll go ahead and put it on Autopilot, and there you can see it seems to be working just fine. So, I mean, this was something I anticipated. I didn't anticipate it to not work, but you can see that we do have it staying in the center lane. Let's go ahead and change lanes, see how that works. And sure enough, as anticipated, it works just fine. It's showing, of course, kilometers per mile. I can bump up the speed or lower it as usual. So yeah, it works. But when you're in Mexico, you almost want to be the one in control. Though there's not a lot of traffic now, so I actually feel comfortable using it now. But there are a lot of times when you're driving in Mexico and you want to be in control of the car. So just kind of want to give you a quick snippet of that. Yeah, indeed, it does work in Autopilot, and works as usual. So as you can see, it worked fine. There really weren't any problems. I mean, Autopilot works on the markings on the road anyway, as it is, so that's not really an issue. So it worked fine. Now, if I had to do it on an area where there weren't many markings on the road, just like in the States, it's not going to work very well. So yeah, it worked just fine. Now, another thing, of course, I'd like to address, and this is kind of outside of Mexico itself, but more in the line of just traveling long distances in an EV. And I addressed this, I don't know, a little over a year ago in a video I did driving to and from Texas. And be sure to check that video out because it was one of my first experiences driving that long of a distance. In fact, it's halfway across the country, as a matter of fact, and what it was like finding superchargers and range anxiety, all that stuff, right, that usually come with EVs. And range anxiety, I'm way past that. I don't have range anxiety anymore. I've had the car long enough. I know the capability of the battery, how far it can go, and what the EV can do, right? So that's not even an issue for me. And quite honestly, the supercharging network, it's just continuing to grow. And it's never been a problem for me to not find a charger anywhere that I've traveled. It's phenomenal. Whether it's a supercharger or even a destination charger, even chargers that aren't Tesla where you got to use the adapter, that is phenomenal to me. So again, another thing, the main thing I like to address with these long distance travels, and again, I talked about it in my earlier video, is this. It's safer, in my humble opinion. It may take you a little bit longer than if you were driving in an ICE vehicle. And the reason being is because in an ICE vehicle, you don't have to make as many stops. But see, that's where I think the disadvantage is. Because to me, it's safer. And the reason I say that is because you're forced to make more stops more frequently. So I drive one of these long distances on average about 3 hours, give or take 30 minutes in either direction. And I find that that is a perfect amount of time for you to drive, get a little fatigued because of it, and then stop to charge and refuel yourself, whether it's getting a snack, something to eat, maybe something to drink, or even just laying back in the seat for 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of recuperate. By the time your car is charged to get to the next supercharger, you do it for another 3 hours. And once again, you're a little fatigued, you're good to go. So I find that even though you do have to stop more often, it's actually safer to travel that way, in my opinion. Now, on top of that, autopilot, right? That is another big topic to discuss here because of the fact that it does relieve a lot of stress when you're driving. You don't have to worry about staying in your lane. You don't have to worry about keeping the speed because it's using adaptive speed or cruise control. So it really does reduce the amount of fatigue that you would typically have on a long distance trip. So again, those were some of the things I just wanted to bring up here in my final thoughts of this video. If you enjoyed it, hey, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out my channel, be sure to do that. I've got a lot of great instructional videos for you about the car in general to kind of help you get more associated with your car, because as we all know, it's not just a car, it's an amazing piece of technology. So thank you all so much for watching, and you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and stay positively charged.